about in public funds.
So much more the woman and the boss.
Says on the valuation. It's competent. Proper management of public resources. As public servants, we are entrusted with ensuring that public funds are used for the benefit of all residents of Kingston and St. Andrew. And I take this responsibility seriously.
Somebody needs to know.
Says I will continue to uphold the trust placed in us by the people we serve, ensuring that all applications follow established policies and best practices. So we didn't call the mayor's name. What we did say in the report was that Lawrence Rowe's allegation was that a senior official at the municipal corporation was seen handing out cash in central Kingston, and that the senior official didn't inform him that he was coming around handing out cash. Mayor Swaley has responded to suggest perhaps that some.
Well, if you bring up one and two, that means that it was in fact Mayor Swaley has seemingly admitted that he was the public official out there handing out cash. I mean, if it's silly. If there's one thing we know about it, when it comes to corruption and shame, the PMB have none. They have never had any qualms about what they do and when they do it. I'm gonna play the rest of it. I'm gonna play the rest of it. Right? Then normally have any qualms about what they do when they do and how they do it. But because it's basically nationwide alone and trying to bring it to the public, places like Plena, the whole of the RJR team, the whole of the RJR group, 7 radio stations, about 4 or 5 TV stations, countless amount of high-paid reporters, and them can't spare one reporter to go investigate the level of corruption going on at the KCC in Kingston, in St. Catherine, in Trelawney, in Manchester, and in Westmoreland. All PMP head councils have been involved in great scandal, issues of public fund, embezzlement. Everywhere we can put on it, the evidence is there. But the other media house in Jamaica and all the other reporters can find a few minutes to go look over it. But a reporter was driving around the PM constituency. Two little boy painting a sidewalk. And that was news. St. Mary to birthday, man. That was news. Right? That was news. A building part of a Mark Golding constituency, nothing. Mark Golding and invest in a low-income house in another country, nothing. David Campbell, and yes, David Campbell, come to me. You see, Mr. Vegas. Sue me. Just sue me. I have a broke my day. That's I mean, I'm not forgive. But if you come to me, you think you can practice people report that way. David Campbell is heard that a recording explaining how public funds were distributed for political purposes. David Campbell is heard that a recording explaining how public funds were used for political purposes. Right? But not one of the news media didn't care for a couple of seconds to make a continue.
Resource allocation. Now, among the meanings of the word allocation is distribute. So distribution, allocation are synonyms. But in the case of public funds, which are
I'm going to listen to the recording on YouTube.
portion based on representation. So if you're a councillor, what you get for your division is this,
Yeah, Jay,
and
good
no
night.
division gets more than any other division because it is bigger or has more electors in it. No. So when the mayor says he in his role allocates resources where a councillor is absent, it's a stretch because it is not up on his determination that amount is arrived at to be given to the councils, and then he, by exercise of his own authority and power, then pays over that money. No, he distributes it because it is already in the rules how it is that money should be distributed among the councillors in the KCMC. So when he says that, to prove that I was non-partisan in how I distributed money over the period, I spoke to and involved people representing the JLP, as if to say he could have done otherwise. You couldn't have done otherwise, man, because you would have been going against what the KSAMC is existing to do and what your role as mayor dictates you to do. So if you are giving or if you are facilitating resources being used and distributed to JLP representatives, it's not a favor. So to hold that up to say, look how fair I am, I did this, it proves that I am not biased. It's like saying the sky is blue. I mean, you're doing your job. That's what you're supposed to do. Here's the thing, though. The story from Roe speaks specifically. It calls a name and says that individual was seen by Roe handing out cash. So you never addressed it in your statements. I'm asking you squarely this morning. Was it you, Mayor? Was it you that Lawrence Rowe saw handing out cash?
Yes, and the fact that me will be squealing, I think it's him.
Because the way you've written the statement is not to absolve the KSAMC of blame, it's to absolve yourself of blame. But remember, you were never named in the story. Dr. Dayton Campbell was named and you heard his voice. Audrey Smith-Facey was named. Lawrence Rowe was named. We mentioned somebody else, we didn't name that individual. So since it is that you personalize the statement to this extent, were you the person seen in Central Kingston handing out cash? That's the first question. Next, the statement says that
IRS e-file is open.
You're on here sometime. Yeah.
the statement says that municipalities do not disburse cash. And it says, at no point did the KSAMC authorize or facilitate cash disbursements to any
Come
individual.
on, you
If
bring
any
up
such
this thing,
transaction
tell our friend, I'm going to
it was not sanctioned by the corporation
Oh,
and it not involve public funds. I don't understand what this is saying, because if we're to go by the allegations, if public money through the KSAMC was being distributed, then obviously the KSAMC wouldn't authorize it, because for the KSAMC to authorize, there has to be a meeting out in broad public, well, not broad public, out in the view of the councillors of the KSAMC, who would then vote and authorize whatever disbursements would have been made. So the JLP council would have known that these allegations of these resources are being distributed. So would the PNP councils know that these resources are being distributed. So it wouldn't have risen to the subject of a report to an anti-corruption / law enforcement agency, because this was not being done in secret. This was not being underhand, because it was on the floor of council that this would have been raised and authorized. So to say that at no point did the KSAMC authorize or facilitate cash disbursements, that's a non-issue. That's a non-point, because the allegation is that certain people, using their influence in the KSAMC, got cash, you don't know from where.
Well,
and distributed
billions of dollars.
cash. That would not have been on the up and up. That would have not have been to the knowledge of the councillors of the KSAMC for them to authorize it. So to say that the cash distribution was not authorized by the KSAMC is a non-point, because the allegation is about money that was being shared in an underhand / illegal manner. That's the allegation. So based on what we saw from Rose, something we didn't put in the story, Rose said on December 24, in that conversation with Mrs. Smith-Facey, who we've tried to reach several times, left messages, called multiple times, not even a response. Rose said that someone left $25,000 in cash for him in an envelope. Was it you, Mayor?
25,000 about. And listen, let me remind you guys. Let me remind you guys that Bobby Pickers Gill told us that when the PNP have bribe and collect money, they did it in brown paper bag. Bobby Pickers Gill word that inside a brown paper bag, them do it in a.
I'll not swell the question by adding more to it. I'm just asking that. And the claim by Roe, this is the most important question of all. I only came here to ask one question this morning, because since you personalized the statement, I'm asking you. Roe, when he was speaking to Dr. Campbell, was very upset that a certain individual was there handing out cash. I'd like to ask that individual where the cash come from, but I don't have him in front of me.
That's me, it's maybe.
So, since
That's
it's
me,
a personal
Campbell.
statement, Mr. Mayor, was it you? And then on top of that, were you the one who left that thing in an envelope for Mr. Rowe that he told Mrs. Smith-Pacey that he was going to pick up on the morning of December 24? And more to that, there's another name of another individual who was called, of course we won't call that name, who Rowe asked of Miss Smith-Pacey, did such man collect his? And did he pick up mine? I mean, here says someone said leave 25 grand for me in my envelope.
Mm-hmm.
Was that you, Mayor? So 2 questions for you this morning. I made
Thank the people listening all over.
that you published last Friday. Explaining.
People listening all over, YouTube, TikTok. Accuse your enemy of what you are doing, and no one will look at you. Accuse your enemy of what you are doing, and no one will look at you. For the past 4 years, the People's National Party has been going around trying to convince the Jamaican people we are now in the most corrupt government we've ever seen. That has been what they've been trying to convince the Jamaican people. With no evidence behind it. Right? No evidence, not one shred of evidence behind it. Right? And this is a first in the history of Jamaica where an opposition party is involved in government money scandal. An opposition party, a party in opposition, has found a way to be misappropriating government funds. Right? An opposition party has found a way to be misappropriating government funds.